What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the CelticsPod pre-draft live stream. We've got the whole team here. We've got me, Mr. Greg Manakis, Mr. Will Weir. We're going to have some guests popping in and out throughout the show. I don't want to name drop because if one of them can't make them, then it looks bad on all of us. You know what I'm saying? So when they turn up, they turn up. If they don't turn up, then guess what? You didn't know they didn't turn up, so nobody's upset. What's going on, guys?
How we doing, man? I'm happy to be here. Happy to be here. I like this because I know you're the host of this, so you can see how many people are tuning in right now. I can't, so I'm just imagining there are thousands and thousands of people watching this right now.
It's
Oh,
like,
dude, just tell yourself there's like 10 million and just live with it. You
yeah,
know what I'm
we're,
saying?
we're we're like The Rock right now. The millions and the millions of the Celtics blog podcast fans from around the world
That's
tuning
what
in
I'm
right now.
saying, dude. That's what you need to be thinking. Just constantly tell yourself that's what's happening and you're going to be fine.
That's how Will lives his everyday life, though, bro. We have this running joke that Will thinks that he's constantly in a music video. So everything he's doing, he's just like walking in slow motion. You see him you'll see Will enter a bar and he literally will he'll do like the LL Cool J, start touching his face. He'll like point to nobody randomly on the side. And we're just like, yeah, Will got it. Will got it. He's walking to his own drum right now.
So
Yeah,
the
this is
crazy
all right,
part
man.
is that like Greg said that like our close friends say that. I've had coworkers, teachers, people that don't know me very well that are like, you know what? You kind of feel like you're in a music video all the time, don't you? So it's people notice this pretty quickly about me. So I don't know what that says about me. I'm not sure I want to go digging down that rabbit hole and find out. So we'll just leave it at that.
I mean, if you feel like you're in a live music video all the time, then you probably are in a live music video all the time, especially when you're rolling with Greg that's dropping like ridiculous stacks to be on for his music videos consistently. But we have our first guest, everybody that's tuning in. We're joined by draft expert, head coach extraordinaire, Mr. Adam Spinella. How's it going, Spins?
Hey, gentlemen, how we doing? Thank you for having me on here. Good to be with you this afternoon.
Yeah, man,
Hey,
we
what's
were
going
just
on,
chewing the
Spin?
fat, dude. So this is meet Greg, meet Will.
What's
You're the
up, man?
first
How you
guest
doing?
of this live stream. The idea is we bring on the draft expert for the pre-draft show to start the show because otherwise it's just going to go downhill quickly. Um, Celtics are looking to be picking in the mid-second round. Do you want to throw us some names, some fits, anybody you think could be worth a flyer, and then we'll discuss options about moving out of the draft completely or trying to move up.
Yeah, again, well, happy to go in any direction that you gentlemen want to take this. I think right now at 45, it's important to get a feel for the rest of the draft first and kind of set the stage for what type of prospects talent-wise might be available. I like to think of the NBA draft in terms of ledges of talent, where there's a tier of prospects at this level, and then there's a ledge where you fall off to get to the next one. And right now, I'd say at around the 40 to 41 pick mark, there's a pretty decent ledge. So you put yourself in a position, if you're the Celtics, to say, if one of those guys essentially falls down, I think that they're probably too tantalizing of a talent to pass up, where you have a pretty realistic expectation at 45 that you're not going to find somebody to help you right away. It's just very rare to have that happen. So if there is a talent who might grade out as more of a fringe first round guy that ends up falling to you in the middle part of the second, you take him. That said, looking at some of the names that are rumored to be a little bit more around 45, the one guy that I really like, who I think fits really well with what the Celtics are trying to do, would be Quinton Grimes out of Houston. He's maybe getting some late first round conversation right now, but more than anything, not a ton of clear upside to a guy like Grimes. Really good 3-and-D prospect, knows his role, comes in and defends really, really hard, which I love about him. He can move his feet in space, about 6'5", but it seems like Stevens wants to build a roster that's pretty wing heavy. So bringing on a guy like Grimes, who can make an impact somewhat earlier in his career in comparison to other prospects, while also fitting the bill for what they look for. It seems like a no-brainer pick to me if he's available.
And where would you put him, like, if he's on the roster next season? By the way, I love your stuff. Read your stuff all the time on Celtics blog.
Thank you.
Really, really insightful. Do you see him coming in and playing over somebody like a Romeo Langford or anything like that? Or do you think anybody in the second round is going to be just filling out the end of the bench and probably in the G League?
Yeah, to me, it's more so end of bench guys that you find, or at least it's very hard to project and think that they're going to leapfrog a guy who has lottery talent like Langford and has been in the NBA for a couple of years and knows what to expect in terms of physicality, what's going to be asked of him within his role in order to earn minutes. So I think that the guys who come in and earn a little bit earlier of a role are the guys who defend, and the guys who may have been a multi-year college player who seem to really embrace their role and understanding that they're not going to be the guy at the next level. A lot of times there are prospects who fall to the second round because they're really tantalizing in terms of their upside, but they also don't know how to not be an alpha, so to speak. They've been the best player at every stop that they've played their entire career. And you got to recognize when you're coming into the Boston Celtics and you've got Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown next to you, that is not your role. So the best way to earn immediate minutes is to draft somebody who's either been a role player before at the college or international levels, or to have it be one of those veteran guys who's been through a couple of years in college, seen and gone against lottery prospects before and how they project to the NBA, and then can come in and say, I'm just going to embrace this and do the dirty work or whatever is really asked of me in order to just find some minutes to help my team.
Yeah, Adam, I love the way that you put it, where there's different edges within the draft of where there's these different gaps of players. And so when you're looking at 45, I think the Celtics are going to have pretty much three options. You just talked about the one where it's the lottery projected guy maybe coming out of high school and then something went wrong and the talent's just, hey, it's 45. Let's take a shot. He's kind of where we're going. There's the draft and stash guy, which I do think is an option for the Celtics where the roster's getting a little crowded. And then there's kind of that veteran guy, the veteran college guy that you just talked about, maybe a little bit older, knows his role, is happy to kind of fit in. And you actually wrote about a guy that I watched a couple times this year, Austin Reeves, coming out of Oklahoma. So Greg and I, we live in Austin, Texas. So I get to catch a lot of the Big 12 games, got to watch a lot of the Texas Longhorn games. And there was a specific game where versus UT, they went into overtime. And I didn't know much about Austin Reeves going into the game. He just kind of felt like one of those guys when you're playing pickup ball, he's a hooper. You know what I mean? He's just a guy that kind of finds a way to make winning plays. You couldn't necessarily, especially looking at his stats, you can't necessarily define, well, he's a shooter. He's doing this or he's doing that. He just kind of finds a way to make plays. So I'd be curious for you to talk a little bit more, either specifically about Austin Reeves, since I know you wrote an article about him for Celtics blog, or if there's any other of those veteran college type guys that you think the Celtics could be looking at that would be nice for that end of the bench and like you talked about, might kind of know their role when they jump into a game playing off of stars like the Jays.
Yeah, fantastic points. With Reeves, I'll talk about him a little bit. I think the backstory is really fascinating for a guy like Reeves and understanding what he might bring to the table. But just bare bones, 23-year-old prospect, played 4 years in college while redshirting a fifth. So he's a little bit older than you would typically find for a guy who's going to come into the NBA. We've seen Danny Ainge kind of like those guys in the past. He drafted Peyton Pritchard a year ago. Not necessarily sure if Brad Stevens is going to follow suit. But then again, we don't know what he's going to do in terms of preferences with anything. Reeves started his career at Wichita State when they were a top 5 program in the country. And he was a sharpshooter, catch and shoot type of guy on the perimeter. What you usually see when guys transfer up from like a mid-major school to a high major place like Oklahoma is they go from being a high volume guy to shrinking that down and figuring out how they fit in, next to other really good players. And Reeves had the exact opposite trajectory. He was all spot up, catch and shoot at Wichita State, came to Oklahoma and did pretty much everything with the ball in his hands and probably just outperformed in practice during his redshirt year to open eyes to people to say he can really be the engine for this team. And he's been doubted at every step. Wasn't seen as a guy that was supposed to be playing Division I at Wichita State. Wasn't supposed to be an engine that could carry Oklahoma to the NCAA tournament and a top 10 ranking this year nationally. So I think that, especially as Brad Stevens as a coach, is drawn to those chip on their shoulder type of guys. There's something kind of Boston about that, having that, I don't care what you say about me, what you set that expectation for my ceiling is, I'm going to blast through it. Screw you. Like there's something really endearing about that. So it's really hard not to root for a guy like Reeves. Statistically speaking, because he's done so much with the ball in his hands at Oklahoma, we haven't seen a lot of volume for him as an off-ball player the last 2 years. but we know he can do it because of his time at Wichita State. And he hasn't shot the ball well from three, even off the dribble, the last 2 years at Oklahoma. But we know he can do it because of the time at Wichita State. So a real fascinating conundrum of a 23-year-old prospect who's had this real up and down trajectory in terms of how he shoots the ball, which is going to be his meal ticket at the next level if he's going to play, especially alongside Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. So defensive concerns, like he's not a guy that I firmly believe in, but when you know his backstory and you think that the shooting can pair well with what he's proven the last couple of years at Oklahoma, I see a lot of upside for him.
Before I quickly fire out these trades that have just come up on the Twitter sphere, the one question I kind of wanted for you, I know we're keeping every guest to like 10-15, so I just want to fire this out straight away. In a perfect world, if all of the prospects you envision being available around that 40 to 46 mark are there, who would be your surefire guy for the Celtics to actually jump for?
So a name that gets rumored to be around in that area is Jeremiah Robinson Earl out of Villanova. And I'm a huge fan of his. First off, it's kind of about the pedigree of Villanova guys. How many role players in the NBA come out of Villanova and end up being really successful? It's kind of role player university. And if that's what we're talking about and the type of thing that you find at 45, there's very little downside to taking a guy like him there. 20 years old, placed in about the 70th percentile on his catch and shoot threes from a spot up situation last year on the perimeter. So believe that he is overlooked a little bit in terms of his shooting prowess. He's not seen as a great guy, but if you break down the numbers into where he shot well, it translates to what he would be asked to do with the Boston Celtics, and a really, really good versatile defender. As I was coaching at the college level the last few years, used clips of Robinson Earl to show our players how they should be moving on defense, what type of positioning they should be in, the polish, the switchability, like everything that he has done is pristine down to a T, fundamentally sound. And I love guys like that. Again, I know that's the coach in me, but there's a very good chance that what the Celtics need out of this pick is low risk, even if it means lower reward. Robinson Earl's probably never going to come in and score 10 to 15 points a game. But just having that solid 7th through 10th man when he eventually gets there, that does all the dirty work, makes the right decisions, and has an NBA pedigree because of where he's come from and who his father is, I think he's going to be really, really ready to come in and help the Celtics out earlier in his career and end up being a steal at 45.
I was giving the other guys a chance to speak. I don't want to feel like I'm dominating the mic. Let me just throw this up. This will be the last thing we ask of you, Mr. Spinella. We've got somebody asking if we're expecting Tristan to be traded at some point tonight. And the reason I've thrown this on the screen is simply because of this absolute Woj bomb that's happened while we've been speaking. I don't know if the rest of you have been checking your phones, but my notifications are blowing up.
Yeah, I got to pull it up here, man. I'm with you.
Yeah, Lakers and Wizards are discussing a trade that would send Kyle Kuzma, Montrez, and Contavious Caldwell-Pope for Westbrook and possibly the Lakers' 22nd draft pick. And then we had the other one, which was confirmed, which was the Brooklyn trade, right? Where, let me scroll back down.
I didn't see that bomb you just dropped. I saw the Brooklyn trade. I hadn't seen that other Westbrook bomb.
Yeah, that Westbrook one's a bomb, dude. Brooklyn have traded Landry Shamet to Phoenix for Javon Carter in the 29th pick. So there's movement already, and there always is coming into these type of draft nights, especially with one where the draft class is so deep. Do you see Boston, or do you see a world where Boston try and move up into the lottery, or just like the late teens, early 20s?
So I think there's two parts to this question. One is assessing the value of a guy like Tristan Thompson right now. And it's less about Thompson and his contract as it is about bigs in general. Like, it's very easy to find a replacement level big man to the point where you don't necessarily need to trade a first round pick in order to get your, first big off the bench. And I think that's pretty much what Thompson is on most teams right now. He's their first big off the bench on a playoff caliber team that would make an aggressive move of mortgaging their future with a draft pick in order to get a big man. So I think in understanding that, it's really hard to contextualize what type of team might be a buyer for Thompson in a way that would net the Celtics a draft pick. Would I love to see it happen? Yeah, I would. But I don't think that alone, X for Y in a vacuum necessarily works. Now, I would not be surprised if the Celtics end up getting involved in a trade either tonight or shortly after that involves Thompson and the use of their traded player exception to become a little bit more of a facilitator. And in order to, sweeten the pot for Boston, they end up walking away with another draft pick. So if the Lakers are planning on making a huge trade, and because of all of the financial difficulty that they find themselves in, the luxury tax, they need someone else to offload a contract, maybe Stevens looks at the traded player exception as a way of getting them an additional draft pick, where we take on some salary in order to get, somebody in that 17 to 24 range, so to speak.
Yeah, I'm with you, Adam. I think that's where, if there is an opportunity that Tristan Thompson gets moved tonight, it's going to be, I think the Celtics in general are going to be facilitators if there's any type of movement tonight, or they'll maybe shift around somewhere in the second round and maybe get cash considerations or move up or move back a few picks. I don't think there's going to be anything dramatic, but I think a lot of these big moves that we're starting to see trickle in are going to have these ripple effects of different players that become available because different pieces need to move, different rosters have changed from what their construction once was. And maybe that's where I think Tristan Thompson, to your point of maybe not tonight, but in the near future, gets moved because he's got kind of that connector contract that we need, where he's at that, I think it's 9-point-something million. So you take his contract and then you can use Carson Edwards, Grant Williams, whatever else. You can get up to 15 pretty quickly. You put him together with Marcus Smart, which is, popular trade machine topic. I don't know if that's actually going to happen, but then you can get into that 20 million range. So I don't think, I'm with you, I don't think there'll be any movement with Tristan tonight unless there's a certain team that was like, this is a guy that's going to be more valuable this year for a championship run than pick, 25 or whatever it might be, which I don't see being the case. But I do think that there is a distinct possibility that he's getting moved in the near future and that they would hold on to make that move until the dust kind of settles a little bit. And I think really until we figure out if Evan Fournier is back on this team or not, because that will set a lot of the pieces in motion as well.
To go into this this Westbrook deal that just popped out there, that's got to mean something for Beal, right? If Westbrook's getting moved, I would imagine Beal's going to be quick to follow.
I mean, that'd be the train of thought, right? They're going to be looking to retool. I just don't know how much I want to buy stock into any Beal trade at the moment. And especially in terms of like when there's other teams out there, Golden State probably have the best package available. There's teams out there you look at New Orleans with the amount of draft picks they have. You look at Oklahoma with the amount of draft picks they have. For a team that wants to hit a rebuild and reset button, the draft picks are always going to hold the most value, especially in my opinion. I'm sure Adam would concur due to his affinity towards scouting and drafting. So I feel like, for me, the best option to get Bradley Beal as a Celtic is to wait until free agency. But if they're moving on from Russell Westbrook, maybe they're considering it's like an addition by subtraction. You're bringing in 3 guys for the price of 1. You're aiming to improve that way. We just got to see it play out. But I'm not going to jump too deep into that that Beal waters just yet. Adam, I know I told you 15 minutes, matey. So if you need to bounce, then thank you very much for joining us, man. I hope you enjoy draft night. I'll be sleeping by the time the Celtics pick.
Well, thank you for having me on. Good to talk with all 3 of you gentlemen. And obviously already a wild start to the night here. So grab your seatbelts, grab the popcorn, because it's going to be a show.
Yeah, appreciate you, man. Keep up the good work, man. Yeah, people read your stuff, man. So keep writing.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Appreciate you, Adam. Thank you, man.
Yep.
So where do you guys stand on? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Will.
No, I was just going to continue the Westbrook Beal conversation.
Me too.
Briefly. Yeah.
That's
okay.
insane,
Perfect. We got the same mind here. So I actually think more to your second point, Adam, of its kind of addition by subtraction, I guess. You know what I mean? By moving on from a superstar or a star, whatever you want to call Russell Westbrook these days. I feel like it changes every 3 weeks, but whatever you want to classify him as, and bringing in these other pieces. Because, if you think back to it, the original trade was Wall for Westbrook. Wall kind of felt like a dead asset. Westbrook has been made out to be somewhat of a dead asset in that it's going to be harder to move him for the same value that he actually brings, just because he's just that weird, unique type of player that I think we all would say is still a very good player. But where does he really fit in when you're winning? Well, we'll certainly find out if he's going to be next to LeBron James and Anthony Davis coming up. But, I think they might be trying to reset and see what this looks like with Brad Beal. Because remember, he still has that player option. I feel like a lot of people are operating as if he's becoming a free agent at the end of this season. That option for him is still like $38 million. And he's at the age where it's not the Gordon Hayward situation with the injuries where it's, he didn't take the 34 mil and Charlotte came out of nowhere and gave him 30 mil for 4 years. Likely, unless there's a major injury for Brad Beal that happens in this next season, he can pick up that player option, still get that 37 mil, either play it out in Washington. Maybe he starts to force a trade somewhere, and then can go enter free agency and still get a max deal. It's very unlikely that he's not going to be 2 years from now still worth a max deal on the open market. At least I would think so. So I think Washington might be doing this move as a chance to see what are the chances that we can keep Brad Beal happy and maybe build a winner with more pieces of talent around him than just what Westbrook brought to the table.
Yeah, I mean, you've got. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Greg. Go ahead.
I just don't know if I agree with that sentiment that the player option is likely to be picked up. I feel like that's more for players that would get less on the open market, right? Beal's just going to get a max deal. He's going to get like $40 to $45 million a year. So I think that player option is actually not relevant in terms of the Bradley Beal discussions. But I don't know, man. Like when you look at what they got back, right? It's probably official if Shams is reporting it. Kuzma, Harrell, and Pope. So Harrell and Pope, Harrell's going to be making around 9 million. Pope's making close to 20. So I would actually be wondering if they're acquiring those people in order to then facilitate further deals. I think Kuzma is probably the one that's definitely sticking around. I think Harrell and Pope are more just for the contracts. And Westbrook at this point, you could make an argument that he was a negative asset, right? So a lot of that might just be salary filler. So I'm not really sure that I buy that this is them trying to see if they can build around Bradley Beal with Kuzma, Harrell, and Pope. I kind of more see this as just getting off of Westbrook.
See, my outlook on it is like you've got Montrez, who's like what a year out, a year removed from being a 6 man of the year. Like he has value. He's used to playing with shooters like the duo that he formed with Lou Williams in that pick and roll. He could replicate that with Bradley Beal. That would terrorize defenses in the East. KCP's had last season was phenomenal for the Lakers during the bubble in their playoff run. So I think these guys are all valuable pieces to have. And whether or not the Wizards are looking like they're acquiring a pick in this draft, according to Woj just tweeted saying the deal's near, they'll be acquiring a pick in the draft as well. So whether they're trying to walk a tightrope like the Boston Celtics have done for a while and be like a competitive rebuild, like we're going to stay competitive to try and keep Bradley Beal happy, and we're going to rebuild on the fly where possible. That seems like a viable option to me. If I was the GM of the Wizards at the moment and I'm thinking, what can I do to keep Beal? Well, the only way I'm going to make that happen is to be on that rebuild on the fly, stay competitive type of train of thought. So this is why I think that I'm staying far off the trade for Beal kind of train at the moment, because I just think there's just too many moving parts to this, and tweets are blowing up frantically. I think we chose a perfect time to do this live stream. Where are you guys at the moment? I know I tweeted out earlier that I would like them to trade the 45th pick for Jarrett Culver if he was available for a second round pick. That to me holds more value than picking a guy that's got to come in and get adapted to the NBA and figure out his role in the rotation. You'd be bringing in Culver, that's another reclamation project. And to me, that's where, with Boston's financial kind of restraints, that's what they're going to be looking at if they're trying to find diamonds in the rough.
Yeah. I mean, I think if it's all it's going to take is a second round pick to bring in a guy that was a lottery pick, 2 years ago or something like that. You talked about on one of a recent podcasts, Adam, about Justice Winslow. I think they're different players, but it's in the same vein that you're trying to find a way to get depth at the wing spot, right? So right now we have Aaron Nesmith and Romeo Langford behind the Jays. We'll see what happens with Evan Fournier, but between Aaron Nesmith and Romeo Langford, you're hoping that this year one of those guys really pops and takes a leap as someone that's a mainstay in the rotation. So if you were to add a Justice Winslow or a Jarrett Culver, you're just giving yourselves more opportunities to have a young guy that you can stick around and build in as depth behind the Jays. So if it's going to cost you a second round pick to take a flyer on a guy like Culver, I'm all for it. I think that would be a move that makes a ton of sense. I think if it's only a second round pick that gets it done, I'm sure there's teams in the same area drafting as the Celtics that are having all the same exact thoughts that you are and discussions that we are, that are saying, yeah, I'm not sure what I'm getting at 42. Why don't I go ahead and trade this for Jarrett Culver? But if that opportunity presents itself, I would definitely be on board with pick 45 going out and bringing Jarrett Culver in for a look.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you just look at the talent situation, bringing in Culver is probably going to be better than anybody that you're going to get at 45. I think, Adam, you brought up a good point, though, about the financial flexibility. And if you bring in Culver, who's entering year 3 in his rookie scale contract, it's closer to an extension time for him and things of that nature. So you might actually be better off taking number 45 so that you have more control over their contract for a more extended period of time. That would be the only thing that I would push back against in terms of acquiring Culver. But in terms of talent, I mean, he was the number 6 pick in the draft 2 years ago, right? So he's got a ton of upside. His 3-point shot hasn't developed over the first couple of years, and that was the biggest question with him coming out of college. So I don't know how many more wings that can't shoot we want to add to this roster. I feel like Romeo Langford's got that corner held down. But we got another guest. What's up, Tom Westerholm?
What's going on?
We're joined by
Hey,
Celtics media royalty right here, man. How's it going,
Yeah,
Tom?
that's me. How you fellas doing?
Good, man. Good. It's good to see your face, man.
And Twitter was dead. There was nothing going on. And then all of a sudden, it's just coming everywhere, dude.
Yeah, this is wild, man. Like the Russ stuff is crazy. It's
Yeah.
I don't know how a LeBron Westbrook pairing is necessarily going to look on the court, but I'm intrigued to see it. So.
Yeah, Tom, what do you think about it from the Wizards' perspective? Right before you came on, we were kind of kicking it around. Does this mean that they're trying to help Brad Beal, that they're kind of saying, all right, Westbrook's gone, now maybe we're in asset gathering mode? What are you reading on it so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to see it as something to help Beal, right? Like, it's just like it feels a lot more like, yeah, maybe asset gathering, maybe starting to tear things down a little bit. Just like, not that Westbrook and Beal were like a perfect pairing or anything like that, but I think when you look at the rest of the Wizards roster, it's tough to see how they could put something together with Beal at this stage, like just given the assets that they have in place. So, I mean, maybe it was just a matter of Westbrook wanting out. It might've been something like that too. But yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that this is particularly hopeful for the Wizards in terms of keeping Bradley Beal, if that's still their preference. So we'll see, man. I think I guess just from a feel perspective, it feels like it might be the start of something there.
Yeah, for sure. The other rumor that was out there right before Shams tweeted was Woj tweeting that maybe Buddy Hield was going to be on his way to LA. And to me, if I'm the Lakers, who would I rather have? Westbrook at $45 million or Buddy Hield at his contract? I feel like I would have done the Buddy Hield deal. I don't know what they're thinking.
Yeah, I would much rather have Buddy Hield for sure. I mean, it just feels like LeBron always likes having those sharpshooters who are just mainly there to be a sharpshooter. Like that's an archetype that really seems to work with him. And he's had guys who are primarily slashers before on his team before. I mean, obviously, he and Dwayne Wade won a bunch of championships together, so it's not like it can't work with Westbrook. But yeah, I'm with you, man. I think Buddy Hield feels like a perfect fit. It feels like maybe a better version of J.R. Smith, and like J.R. Smith and LeBron worked great together for a long time. So
for sure, but with he played with Dwayne Wade in Miami, and then he played with Dwayne Wade in Cleveland. I feel like Westbrook going to L.A. is more Dwayne Wade in Cleveland.
Yeah, I think that's probably right.
Yeah, hold on. If I can just jump in for a second here, I'm just literally reading. I'm refreshing Twitter as we're talking. Just I'm not sure.
You've caught me. You've beat me here.
What's going to happen? So here's actually Woj's last tweet in real time. There's no agreement in place and work still to do on a Westbrook Lakers deal, but talks with Kings on a possible Hield deal had also been ongoing between the two teams. So maybe we're not too far. Maybe we're just predicting the future here. I don't know. Maybe the Lakers were like, hold up, let's really think about this. Westbrook and LeBron, or does Hield playing off of LeBron and AD make more sense? And they're having buyer's regret already.
Yeah, somebody's wires got crossed. But either way, I mean, it's like it feels like not a great look, right? To just like have like a bunch of guys kind of floated out into the ether like this. Like I don't know who's like immediate buyer's remorse, maybe. I don't know. But like, yeah, this is This is a weird one, man. I don't know who's somebody. It feels like somebody said something to either Woj or Shams that they probably shouldn't have at this stage. But yeah, it's interesting for sure.
Tom, where do you stand on using the pick versus trading the pick for Boston?
For Boston, I would just use it. I mean, the value you're going to get for the number 45 pick in the draft is like really, not much. Like teams occasionally can buy picks, in the Celtics range. So I can't imagine anybody giving up anything that's particularly valuable for the 45th pick. And honestly, there's a decent amount of guys who I kind of like in this range. And I think every year there's guys who slide a little bit in the second round. So to me, sometimes in the second round, guys slide because teams, don't want to pay them, or they want to do a draft and stash guy or something like that. Whereas the Celtics, since this is their only pick this year, they can actually use it on somebody that they want, somebody that they think can contribute right now. So if there is an interesting guy sliding, and the Celtics don't necessarily have to think like, oh man, we don't have the roster space for this guy. Like they will, they don't have a first round pick. They don't have to worry about that. So I would just use it. I would, take a shot on somebody if you I mean, if there's like a low risk, high reward type guy, take a shot. You might as well. Like if Josh Christopher slips, like, yeah, why not? You might as well, might as well throw your hat in the ring.
So where do you stand on with the Celtics draft this year? Right, we had the 16th pick, which we obviously traded in the Kemba and Horford deal. And then we also have the young kid, young point guard, Yamadar, who a lot of people are looking at him as like this year's draft pick, even though we picked them last year. So what are you expecting out of that kid coming in next year?
I mean, he's exciting. He's obviously like, the film on him. We've probably all watched the same film on Yam. It's not like there's like a ton of stuff out there, but he's, just the stuff that he can do is really fun. And I just think like the Celtics, I know they're excited about how well he's shooting, right? Like that was a big thing that they wanted him to work on to really get that up. And yeah, he's up over 40% from three now. You add that into the rest of his game, and there's a lot to like. Like, you never want to take like too much away from a guy who, again, we have a very limited sample size on, and most of the film that we've all seen is highlights and that kind of thing. But, the numbers look really good, and the skill set that he had before he was drafted really suggests that if he added a good jumper, if he added a consistent 3-point shot, there would be a lot to like. And he did, and that's where we are. So I think, it wouldn't be a shock to me if he's just really exciting at Summer League. And everybody just is like, it kind of maybe a more hopeful version of, like everybody got real excited about, the Carson Edwards, Tremont Waters in that Summer League that year. And obviously, those guys have had, some struggles, a little bit of success here and there, but like, I wouldn't be surprised if we kind of get another like super hype train going with Yam after this Summer League, just because he can really pass it. He can really handle, and now he can shoot. So I think, those are three pretty important things if you're an NBA player. So it should be pretty fun.
Yeah,
how much stock
raise my hand on the C Boogie guilt over here. Sorry, I was definitely on the Carson Edwards trains. I'll admit I'm guilty of that.
I'm not ready to give up on him yet. I still think
I am. I was guilty of it, and I'm ready to get off him. So I don't know. I don't know which way that works out.
How much stock are you putting in Yam? Because I was looking at his stats yesterday, and they're like pretty much completely parallel with what Denny Avija's were last year. And then Avija had like good moments in the league, bad moments in the league, a typical rookie year. Do you think Yam's going to come in and be able to kind of what's the word I'm looking for? My mind's gone blank. Mirror that and be able to actually have an impact? I feel like Madar's coming in with a bit of a skinnier frame. He might get bullied a little bit more. He might even just get stashed while his body fills out, because I've just got a feeling he could get completely bodied whenever he's on the floor against NBA talent. So that's my biggest concern there.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I mean, there was that tweet that Chris Grenham pulled up the other day where it was like Yam like flipping tires and doing all that CrossFit stuff, which was pretty funny. But yeah, I think, look, he's a rookie coming in from, he was playing in a completely different type of league. Obviously, he was playing against grown men, overseas, but the NBA is different. There's no question about that. I think certainly if he does play for the Celtics this year, I would expect like a pretty steep learning curve. Like it might be a tough rookie season, but I think when you look at the rest of the, basically everything that he brings to the table from a basketball perspective, maybe he's an occasional backup this year. Maybe he's maybe he doesn't have like a huge season this season, but I think there's a lot to like looking forward into the future. And if you can buy him some minutes here and there, just start to get him used to the NBA game, I think there's a lot of value in that if you're the Celtics, just because, they might have some depth issues at point guard anyway. So, depending on what they do in the rest of the offseason. So there could be minutes available for him, probably not super high impact minutes, but if there's time to develop him, I think that's definitely worthwhile.
Yeah, definitely. And even if he has, a rough rookie season, he'll always have Las Vegas. I'm sure he'll ball out in the summer league, just like Carson Edwards always has the preseason game against the Cavs.
Yeah, but I mean, look, and there's a lot of value in in summer league and in getting those reps. I think we saw it last year, right, where Aaron Nesmith came in, and the only reason he got on the floor is because he was willing to just like throw himself headfirst into the basket stanchion to try to get the loose ball. Like that was the only reason he played. And I really think like if he had a summer league, if he had a chance to kind of get himself used to the NBA game, if he'd had a chance to play against NBA players, like I think I think that could really work. Like for Yam to have that extra time, that extra attention to detail that you get in summer league. All those things are really important. So yeah, I don't. It's easy to joke about that kind of thing, and it's easy to joke about like guys who had huge summer leagues and then went on to do nothing. But it's less about the numbers and more about the experience. Like I think summer league's a really valuable tool for these guys, especially somebody like Yam who really does need to get used to the NBA game.
Yeah, and it's super fun, man. Going to summer league is super fun. If people that are watching right now, if you have not gone to Las Vegas for NBA summer league, it is like one of the best times you'll ever have.
Yeah, it's a blast, no question.
Yeah, it's on the list for the three of us, me, Greg, and Adam, to make sure that we're linking up there next year. But as we're talking about all of these younger guys on the end of the Celtics roster as it currently stands, and who knows what will happen in the next couple of days. Something may happen as I'm trying to get this question out right now. But I'm curious to know from your perspective, Tom, who do you think out of those guys that are all in the league, 3 years or less, let's take Rob Williams out of the equation, who are you looking for most to kind of pop and stick somewhere in that Celtics rotation to make a difference? And you have a lot of options, so I'm curious to see where you take it.
Well, I think the two, I think the two that the Celtics are most hopeful about, obviously, are Nesmith and Romeo, right? Like those are the two guys where if one of those guys hits, that's a big deal, because then you've got either your spot up 3-point shooter, or you've got like another a secondary creator who's also a wing and who's shown that he can really defend. And I think there are some real roadblocks for both of those guys, right? Like Nesmith, like again. It's tough to judge anything off his rookie year just because he had so little time in the offseason. I don't even know necessarily what to expect from him, or if we should even expect anything from him. And Romeo, it's again like he's he just hasn't been able to stay on the floor. Like that's rough. That's really tough for a guy who's been in the league for a couple of years now. So and both of those guys have shown flashes. So I guess if I was pinned into a corner, I would probably say I think Romeo is probably the higher ceiling of the two of them. Just the fact, like the slashing that we've seen from him at other levels of the game, and just, how smooth he was in high school and college. And, just the pick and roll play that Brad Stevens loves, but they just haven't had a chance to really develop in him. I think all of those things are really valuable. And the defense just is so much better than certainly I expected, having seen him in high school, having seen him in college. I mean, he was a garbage defender. And, now he's in the NBA and he's like, like playing pretty well against James Harden. And it's like, all right, yeah, like I didn't see that coming at all. So I think if Romeo pops, that's big, because the secondary creator, the extra defense, just the versatility that he brings, all that stuff is really important. If Nesmith pops, that's great, because he can really shoot, and he can really defend, and maybe he can create a little bit more than we thought. But to me, I would lean toward Romeo as just kind of the one guy where if he really makes it, that's a big step for the Celtics.
Can you see this tweet on the screen, Tom?
I can. Let's see. So they want to add talent around Beal.
How much of a gut punch is this for all Celtics fans right now? How sad are we all feeling? And how likely is it that this actually sticks? So just before you came on, we were talking about Washington's best chance at keeping Beal is to kind of take a leaf out of Boston's book and embark on a competitive rebuild. So put players around Beal that are easily tradable but can also impact winning straight away. So Montrez makes a bunch of sense. KCP less sense, but you can still see why they'd do that there. And then obviously Kuzma, who I think gets a very short end of the stick, especially from Celtics fans, that could end up being a high-level role player. So that makes a bunch of sense to me. But do you think Bill's willing to stick it out while they do that? Or do you think that this is just a last roll of the dice before they lose him next year in free agency?
It's a good question, man. I don't totally know what to make of that one, because I think you could look at it both ways. Like, I mean, they weren't going to build a championship team around Bradley Beal with Westbrook there. Just the money, and I like Westbrook. I think he's a little bit underrated by a lot of NBA fans at this point. But like, he just isn't that guy anymore. He's just, he brings value, but he doesn't bring like that kind of value anymore, I don't think. So like, I don't know, because like I could also see Washington just doing this and putting it out there like, no, we're trying to build around Beal to try to bring in, more offers, try to up his value as well. I don't know, man. That's a weird one. And I think, like for Celtics fans, like there is kind of a certain element of win-win with this, right? Because I don't know, what you guys have been talking about. I personally don't see any world in which the Celtics can get Beal without giving up Jalen. So if you're a Celtics fan and you want to keep Jalen, which makes sense because he's, Jalen Brown, he's a really good player, that, there is some positive there where, maybe you're not giving up him. Maybe you get to go back to Tatum and say, look, man, we wanted to bring in your best friend. We're sorry, but Washington's keeping him now. There's nothing we can do about it. I don't know. And obviously if he gets to next season, I don't think the Celtics have a very clear path to max cap space. Maybe there's some things they can do. You'd have to ask Ryan Bernardoni about that, but I don't necessarily see how they could pull it off. But he certainly, there certainly is a lot of reason to believe that he would want to play in Boston next to Tatum if he did get to free agency. So yeah, it's a long-winded way of saying I don't know what to make of that.
I like seeing all of our brains work in real time, trying to figure out how we assess this. And we all kind of came at it like I think we've covered every angle of it and have had different pieces of it that have all kind of worked together. So I think that's probably my favorite part about what's going on right now is all of us trying to figure this out.
See the gears grinding.
Yeah.
Well, here exactly. We got Marcus Thompson says he's hearing that Bradley Beal is opting to stay in DC. So that's pretty interesting. I honestly think, and I talked about this over on my pod on Geno Time a couple of episodes ago. I think there is a lot of value to the Celtics I think the world of Jaylen Brown as a basketball player. I think they should, try to keep him. He's really good. And I think there's a lot of value if you're the Celtics in trying to put together some kind of package of picks, something that looks absurd for like a tertiary star, right? Like maybe a younger version of Drew Holiday. So whether that's like just names like DeJounte Murray, Colin Sexton, whatever, like somebody like that who I don't know if they're going to be available, but you throw some absurd package of picks out there to try to get a third guy next to Tatum and Jalen, where it isn't necessarily a max guy. It isn't somebody like Beal where, it's going to be this franchise altering, shift everything around kind of thing, but somebody who really will help those guys and could maybe grow with them. I think there's a lot of value in that as opposed to somebody like Beal, who again, he's a superstar and you're going to have to pay a superstar premium for him. So
for sure,
that might not be the worst thing in the world for the Celtics, honestly.
So I got.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, bro. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say, I got to ask what you think about your boy KOC. He said on his last pod that the package he would expect the Celtics to offer up, and he was like really pushing for it, was Jalen, Lob Williams, Romeo. I think he said Nesmith.
It was 2 picks.
And then 2 picks. Yeah.
I don't think he mentioned Nesmith, but 2 picks with the Romeo, Lob, and JB package.
You got to go get your boy, man. I feel like that's too much.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin's well connected. He knows a lot of stuff. He's a really smart guy. To me, if obviously the point might be moot at this point, but if it were me, I would be telling the Wizards, and if I were Brad Stevens, I'd be telling the Wizards, look, like, in this deal, you are getting the best trade asset that exists out there. Like there's no other, there's no better young player than Jaylen Brown, being made available to anyone. And not that Jalen is being made available, but in this instance, like you're not getting better than Jaylen Brown anywhere else. So, sure, you want like if they were going to make that deal, it would be like, sure, like we'll trade you Jalen, but like you're not getting anything else. And yeah, if you want to try to get something else from somebody else, feel free. Like if you can get a better trade package than Jaylen Brown, a guy, a 24-year-old all-star who is on the first year of a multi-year deal, if you can find something better than that out there, be my guest. But yeah, I mean, if I were the Celtics, I certainly wouldn't be offering much more than that, for Beal. But again, the point may be moot the point may be moot now. So
yeah.
Am I the only one concerned about the fit of Bradley Beal?
I mean, in what's like just
like you move on from Jalen.
Explain a little bit more.
So you move on. You move on from Jalen and you bring in Bradley Beal. Your defense takes a huge nosedive straight away because Jaylen Brown's one of your better wing defenders. You lose two-way play. You lose slashing. You get scoring. I get that, but you also lose a bit of size, a bit of length. And then if you add Bradley Beal, well, now we're back to the same issue what we had when Hayward was there or when Kemba was there. There's just too many mouths to feed and not enough touches to go around so everybody can get their rhythm. So I'm kind of looking at it, and I'll go back to what Tom said, where it's like a tertiary star. That makes more sense to me because we've been down this road 2-3 times now with Kyrie, with Hayward, with Kemba, and every time we've always come to the same conclusion. The guy that's brought in as the third star generally regresses rapidly because they're not being put in a position to succeed because they're coming in used to being that number one option, and now all of a sudden you're option 3. And if you put Beal as option 2, then Jaylen Brown starts to regress. I don't know if I trust this fit as much as it. For me, it's like big game hunting for the sake of big game hunting. It's for the gram more than it is for actual success.
Yeah, I think the counter, I would have a couple of things with that. Number one, I will say the Tatum Beal connection is incredibly real. Like those guys are super, super, super tight. And if you're looking at like, trying to keep Tatum long-term in Boston, like there's literally no better way than to get the guy who he, grew up 5 minutes away from and is like, they talk all the time openly about how much they like each other. So, I mean, I think at that point fit, isn't necessarily, that much of an issue. It's like, all right, well, they're trying to keep the superstar. But I think the other thing that's big, Jason Tatum was one of the most double team, triple teams players in the NBA statistically last year. There's stats that show that. And, like with Beal on the floor with him, you wouldn't be able to do that. Like you can't double team somebody and like, also have Bradley Beal on the floor. That would really make Tatum's life a lot easier. And I think, Tatum being on the floor would probably make Beal's life a lot easier because, Beal did all of that while having his second best player be Russell Westbrook last season. So, I think there's certainly the defense. There's no question that would slide a bit. Beal just is not a great defender. I think he'd be a little bit better than he was last year because some of the scoring responsibilities would be taken off him. But I think in terms of fit, I certainly can see the argument for going out and, looking for like some superstar guy who is going to take some of that pressure off Tatum because he had a ton of pressure on him last year. But, again, I also not to keep both sides in it here, but I really do see the argument for keeping Jaylen Brown. That dude is awesome at basketball. So.
Yeah, I'm very much on the side of I don't want to trade Jaylen Brown for Brad Beal. And even a guy like Dame Lillard, who I think is a next level above a Brad Beal. I have my own hesitations of trading Jaylen Brown, even though if you just look at would you rather have for the next 2 years, Jaylen Brown or Dame Lillard, I'd rather have Dame Lillard and have 2 top 12 guys in the league and then take my chances kind of filling that out. But if I really look ahead with the remainder of what's left on that massive contract with Dame Lillard, the age of Jaylen Brown, and then kind of circling back to where I'd like to take this is building out the team without going after Dame Lillard or Brad Beal. And so I'm curious as to Tom, what you think maybe the options are this offseason that you might see as trade chips happening. We had before you came on, someone asked a question about Tristan Thompson being moved tonight. And I don't think he necessarily would move tonight during the draft, but I think he has that connector type contract, which I talked about a little bit earlier. Do you see any moves on the chessboard that might be made this offseason? And I think we just have another breaking news here. What do we got going on here, Adam, before I get to my question?
I do apologize for interrupting you.
No, you good, man. This is how this goes. This is live, baby. This is what we're doing.
I like this.
The Cleveland Cavaliers are requiring Minnesota Timberwolves guard Ricky Rubio, who I've been championing for Boston for the last 2 months. So that's
pour one out, Adam. Pour one out.
Wasted 2 months of my life. A 2022 second round pick and cash for Torian Prince. So that means to me that the rumors around Colin Sexton possibly being available could actually start to bear fruit. And then Tom's podcast, where he's been championing for a guard that isn't named Ricky Rubio, may not be a waste of his life. So at least one of us is winning at this point.
Well,
It's
I
just
mean,
not me.
I wouldn't say that I think that this is necessary. I mean, I don't know, but it's also possible that Ricky Rubio is that his final destination is not Cleveland. I don't know that Cleveland went out and got Ricky Rubio and was like, got him. This is exactly who we were.
Yeah. I'm keeping the hope alive.
Yeah, man. Don't get too down about it yet. It's still possible, but yeah. In terms of other guys, I think like. Again, it's tough to nail down names. I know there were some rumors around DeJounte Murray. I assume that when the Spurs were talking about that, they were probably talking about trying to move up in the draft as opposed to, just trying to get like a ton of future assets because, DeJounte Murray is a future asset. But I think about guys like that, right? Like, again, Murray, Sexton. I'm trying to come up with other guys off the top of my head, but I feel like you guys get what I'm trying to say. Maybe like a guy who is more likely to get, like 4 years, 80 on his next deal, as opposed to like, a guy who's like going to get the, the Rose Rule, second contract or something like that. Just again, if there's a younger version of Drew Holiday, I look at the Bucks model where they had their two guys who they built with, they built. And then eventually they just cashed in everything and they said, we are all in on you two guys. Let's go get Drew Holiday. Let's go get that one guy that we really want. I think there's a lot of value in that. I think the Bucks went all in, and I think the Celtics have tried to play both sides of the fence for a long time. I really think that's one of the things that kind of screwed them over because 3-4 years ago they probably could have built a championship team around Gordon Hayward, Al Horford, Jimmy Butler, Paul George, like whatever they went out and got, they probably could have built a championship team, even though it would have involved trading Jalen and Tatum. And then, they probably could have built a really exciting young team with Tatum, Jalen, Terry Rozier. Like if they had gone all in on the youth movement, that also would have been a really exciting team. But instead they tried to straddle the line a little bit. And I don't think it really worked. So now I think it's time. Like if Jalen and Jason are your guys, try to win a championship now with those two guys. Like I think you got, whatever you do, I think you got to try to go all in here.
So you would say that the piece that they would bring in, you want someone that's a little bit younger. To me, I feel like we need to bring in someone that's got a little bit more experience. I love DeJounte Murray. I think he's a great player. His defense is I think maybe properly rated to underrated. He's a hell of a defender. So if you were bringing somebody like that, I'm just concerned that we don't have enough leadership at the top because I think Tatum, hopefully overseas right now in Tokyo, he can figure out the leadership thing being on Team USA. And Will and I were talking about this on our podcast the other day, just like what does the bench role mean for Jason Tatum with Team USA and what can he learn from that experience? And can he take those lessons as a role player and apply them from a lead dog perspective in order to be a better leader for the role players on the Celtics? So I was just wondering real quick, like your thoughts on Tatum with Team USA right now, and if you think that the bench role ultimately could be a good thing for him.
Well, I mean, to the first part of your point, I think that's perfectly reasonable. To think like, hey, maybe they should go out and get a veteran instead of a younger guy. I think that's reasonable. My larger point is that they need to go all in, right? Like they like whatever it is, just go get guys that can help you win now. So if that's an older guy, I think that makes perfect sense. In terms of being like a bench guy, I don't know. He's like. It's tough to really take much away from Team USA at all at this point because like Kevin Durant doesn't look like the second best player in the world anymore. And it's like, well, no, I know he is. So like, why, like what am I supposed to take away from this when, like I think Tatum is probably, one of the, 10 to 12 best players in the world. And he's like coming off the bench. It just doesn't look very good. And it's like, I don't know what to make of any of this. Everything just kind of looks different and weird. I don't think that Patty Mills is better than, 10 of the best American players out there. Like it's international ball is weird, man. I don't totally know what to make of it, but yeah, I mean, look, if it like that, maybe it'll.
So what I'm hearing, Tom, is you think Patty Mills is better than Dame Lillard?
Right. Yeah. No, I think, you trade Jalen. If you have to throw in Rob, you have to do it. And then Patty Mills and Jason Tatum for, banner 18. I think
Patty
that's
Mills on the mid-level is going to be a hell of a steal coming the offseason.
Okay, this is where I plugged the Patty Mills YouTube video I did like 2 weeks ago. So
You're welcome,
anyone who
Adam.
hasn't seen it, please go and watch it. That helps me out greatly. Please continue. I apologize.
No, I mean, that's, that's the larger point, I think, is just like, I think Team USA is just kind of in a weird spot right now. And look, if they come together, if they find a way to win, if they, find a way to somehow get gold, like, great. Like, I think that is a valuable experience at that point, battling through some adversity. Like Tatum and the Celtics have faced a bunch of adversity recently. And I would say they haven't always responded to it the best way. So maybe that does help somehow, but I am not high on Team USA as a group, and I'm not sure what that means for the individual guys either, and how valuable the experience really even will be if they end up getting 7th again. It's like, is anybody really going to feel like great going back home? I don't know. I don't know what to take from that.
I was letting someone else jump in before I started to wrap this up. Has anyone else got anything they want to hit on before I start wrapping this live stream up? The inaugural live stream. No? Everyone good?
This has been fun. This is fun.
Plug
I
away,
like
guys.
this live. I like this live format here. Like I said, we're all trying to figure this out as we go. Nobody's right or wrong. It's like a brainstorming session. So this is a lot.
There
of
are
fun.
no bad ideas in brainstorming. Jack Donaghy.
I guarantee.
I just tried to trade Jaylen Brown for a Patty Mills, so that I think it might be bad.
We haven't even started drinking yet, Tom.
Moments after saying that you wouldn't trade Jalen, you wouldn't consider trading him for Bradley Beal. So this is exceptional podcasting, man.
Look, who's winning right now? Patty Mills or Bradley Beal? I think it's pretty clear.
Hey, we got Olympic Evan Fournier coming back on Monday,
right.
hopefully. So that's the deal I'm looking for.
Would you say? I think he's definitely been the second best player of the Olympics so far, behind Luka. I don't think. Yeah,
he's been really
I think
good.
so far.
Yeah,
it's that fever, man. I'm telling you, Fournier, Doncic, they grew up playing this type of ball with these rule sets. They're just kind of it's ingrained in us Europeans that we don't draw fouls by jumping into people, and we have a bit of a shorter 3-point line. We succeed based on these rules. It's when we go play the American version, it doesn't work out as well. So I blame you guys. Anyway, you gave us basketball too. I'll take the trade off.
No, I said we ruined it. We ruined it for you guys.
Yeah, but you gave it us too, so I'll take the trade off.
Oh, I see what you're saying. That's fair.
Thank you, Tom, for jumping on, man. I appreciate it. It's always fun when you stop by. As usual, I'm joined by Greg and Mr. Will. If you've been watching this live and you don't usually download it, then I don't know what you've been doing, but I hope that you change that and start watching it and listening and downloading. Tom, do you want to plug away where they can find you, where your audio is found, and et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, for sure. So I do the Genotime podcast with Nicole Yang and Chris Grenham over on the Blue Wire Podcast Network. And you can find my writing over on Boston.com, where I cover the Celtics and other things. So yeah, if you feel free to follow me on Twitter, but mostly listen to the podcast where the smarter people than me, do the talking. So,
Will, Greg, where can they find you? Plug away.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, Tom, great getting able to chat with you here, man. As always, you can find me here with Adam on the Celtics Blog Podcast on Fridays. You can find Greg here on Mondays, and you can find Greg and myself together as co-hosts of Green with Envy on the 617 podcast. And then you can hit us up on @GreenEnvyPod, both Twitter and Instagram. And then I'm gonna swing it over to my main man, Greg.
Yeah, man, you did a good job. But we're actually going to be live streaming with Adam on Green with Envy on the Green Envy Pod Twitter handle on Monday for a free agency live stream. So we're going to do a little crossover. Adam's going to come on our pod. Tom, you're welcome if you would like to. And you can find my music at Black Sheep Optimists, and just go cry with us, man. We talked about in the last pod, released a super new sad song called Candles, and we got more music coming out. That's 3 words, Black Sheep Optimists, plural.
Okay, everybody. So thank you for listening. I'd plug myself, but I do enough of that on a daily basis that I feel like it'd be overkill. Everybody stay safe. We'll catch you again on I'm probably going to do a podcast tomorrow. So if you're watching this live, you're probably going to get one in the morning when I'm reacting and crying into my pillow that somebody I wanted didn't get picked or didn't get traded for. Everybody stay safe.